Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame with your hosts, Pierre Camus and Chris Moncano.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame Waiver Wire edition for running backs week 6. And no surprise, another week, another major injury to a stud running back. I'm talking about Dalvin Cook. Now, this is something that's kind of still in flux. We're not sure exactly what the deal is. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to be as serious as with Austin Eckler and Nick Chubb, who are done for several weeks. And of course, guys that you already know about who've been out for most of the season. Right now, it looks like Dalvin Cook could actually be good to go for week 6, maybe week 7. Not a long-term injury, but still, you probably want to make plans to be without him just in case if you've been riding Cook this year. So let's get to this week's top 5 waiver wire picks for running back. And it starts, not surprisingly, with his backup. That's Alexander Mattison. Now, Mattison is a player that really isn't available in a ton of leagues right now, technically 40% rostered in Yahoo. So that's over half the leagues. He should be available. Now, of course, a lot of those leagues, those more competitive leagues, which you guys are certainly in, it's going to be a little hard to find him. But there's a lot of players who maybe had him as a handcuff, in the draft or after a couple of weeks and then dropped him because Cook has been so great. It's kind of hard to just keep a guy like that rostered just for an insurance policy if he isn't getting enough touches to be playable and you need help, at other positions. So Madison could be available. If he is, definitely make a claim on him. Now, here's the thing. Cook is not out for the season. He might not even be out for multiple weeks, but he's still worth picking up. Go get Madison because even if he's the main back or the only back this coming week, it is worth it. Okay, so the Vikings are a run-heavy team by design. Right now, they have the third most rushing offensive plays in the league. They're going to continue to try to pound the ball. So whether it's Madison or Cook, Madison basically is not quite exactly at the same level of Dalvin Cook, obviously, but they didn't really miss much of a beat. He had 112 yards just yesterday, and that was sharing time with Cook. So Madison definitely worth stashing, and you can see why. You have handcuffs in the first place just for this situation. So even if you're not the Cook owner, you grab Madison as a defensive ploy so that somebody else can't grab him. You grab him because if Cook re-aggravates his injury, and a groin injury could be tricky, right? Even if they say there's nothing wrong, nothing serious, it could definitely be re-aggravated. So I would say go ahead and get Madison if you can. Just don't empty the wallet for him if you're not the Cook owner. All right, let's move on to number 2. Damien Harris is still in play. He's about half owned right now in Yahoo League. So Harris is a guy that, well, we still don't know because they haven't played, right? Unexpectedly, that game got moved this week. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens against Denver. It's not necessarily going to be as easy because Denver actually is a top 5 run defense in terms of fantasy points against running backs. So I don't expect Harris necessarily to have a huge game this coming week, but I do expect that he should be rostered in most leagues just because there's so many running backs that have injuries and question marks. And even if he is a Patriots running back, right, we do know that it looks like he's going to be the main guy because Sonny Michel is on IR. Burkhead is never going to be the main guy, right? That's just not what he's for. And James White is never going to be more than the pass catching back. So who's going to get the bulk of the carries on a team that wants to run the ball? And that would be Harris. Okay, so you do have to grab him. Just be careful knowing that the floor is not super high because he's not really going to be involved too much in the passing game. James White is there, Burkhead is there. He's pretty much third in line for targets out of the backfield. So if the running game isn't working, he's not going to give you necessarily, like I said, that sure few points, but definitely worth the upside. So I still have Harris number 2. And that also speaks to the fact that there's not a whole lot of depth on the running back waiver wire this week. Number 3 is a guy who's playing right now as we speak, Justin Jackson. Can't tell you the full story because I'm doing this at halftime of the Monday night game. Right now, I will say that Chris was right because I kind of had the inclination that Kelly was going to be the main guy and Jackson would kind of mix in. But Chris said he really thinks it's going to be a 50-50 split. And that's exactly what's happened so far. Jackson actually with 8 carries and Kelly with 7. Jackson getting a little bit more yardage. It's going to be kind of I hate to say thunder and lightning because that really gives them both way too much credit. But Kelly's going to be kind of the thumper, kind of, the short yardage guy. He's going to get you, those tough runs inside. Jackson's going to bounce it to the outside, try to pop a few big runs, and he'll get stopped behind the line a couple of times. I do have the feeling that Kelly's going to get more of the goal line work. We haven't really seen that because, well, the Chargers seem to be throwing it when they get in the red zone. But I do think Kelly probably has more touchdown upside. Jackson has a higher ceiling in terms of yardage, but overall, this is going to be pretty much a split, not a super appealing split. And here's the problem with Jackson. They have a bye now in week 6. So Jackson's not a great pickup for this week because you can't play him next week because of all the schedule changes. They were going to get the Jets and that got changed. So unless something changes again, Jackson really is just a stash at this point. But hey, if you need a running back, which you obviously do, he's definitely worth a stash because he's part of a 2-man committee for a decent offense, I would say. Going down to number 4 here, we do have Dearness Johnson again. He was a hot pickup last week, although a lot of people are still skeptical, rightly so. Didn't do much. I told you last week when I said you need to go out and pick him up that he wouldn't do much because he was facing the best defense in the league in Indianapolis, and it kind of went as we thought. Unfortunately, he also gets another tough defense in week 6, the Steelers, who have been shutting down. And I know you look at the stats and it looks like Miles Sanders had a good game. He had one really long run for a touchdown, and then he had a 1-yard or 2-yard touchdown. Every other play, he was getting nothing. So I know that it seems a little confusing, but the Steelers' run defense is no joke. Dearness Johnson will not be really involved in the game plan. But here's the thing, right? There's a silver lining here. The next 2 weeks, they go against 2 of the worst run defenses in the NFL, and that would be Cincinnati and Las Vegas. So Johnson does still have value, not this week as a short-term plug-in, but keep him stashed. We know Chubb's going to be out several weeks, so I do stick by my recommendation of keeping Johnson because you might need him. And then last but not least, we have J.D. McKissic, who is far from exciting, but you know what? Everyone's all over Antonio Gibson because he's scoring touchdowns. Didn't score a touchdown this week. Didn't give you fantasy points. McKissic is getting just as many touches, especially in the passing game. So we talk about that floor versus ceiling dichotomy. McKissic technically has the higher floor because he's the one who's catching more passes. Now, the ceiling is very low for him because that's pretty much all he does. But you know what? If you just need a few points to get you by, you want a guy who you know at least in a full PPR league is going to get you something, not nothing. He's not touchdown dependent, not big play dependent. McKissic is involved. All right, so there's that. All right, and they'll have better matchups going forward than the Rams, which was a tough draw this week. Obviously, things are a little hard there in the running back ranks, but hopefully you find some better options in other positions. I do have a video for quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end, so check those out also. And of course, if you haven't done already, hit that subscribe button and that little bell below. Give us some love, right? We're here every week. We got waiver wire, start, sit, risers, fallers, and of course, Endgame live on Sunday to help you win. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.